Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from The Next Reel.
And I'm Pete Wright. And remember Hawkeye? He can fly a plane.
He's back, that's right. Today we are talking about Minute 105, which begins with the brother Tussle and ends with Hawkeye and Black Widow spotting them. Back on the show, we have Ewan Graf. Hello, Ewan.
Hey, guys. I can remember a few brother tussles in my day, so this is a fun minute. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Fantastic. Well, okay, I mean, coming in off of the Thor film, this is our first time we're really getting to see these two fully engaged. We've had some moments between the two of them. Thor obviously catches him earlier in the film, and they have their little moment at the cell before Loki drops him out the bottom. But this is really where they get into it, and their relationship certainly continues over the course of this franchise, the ups and downs. But this is a nice little moment of them fighting. I mean, how does this, do you like the way that this little battle plays here as the two of them take up arms against each other?
I think it's fine. I guess I like it. I always stop with Loki screaming as he jumps, which seems so weird.
No, I love it.
Weird.
I love it.
It's just weird, but I don't know. See, I was an only child, and so I never had a sibling jump off of a high place and attack me. So I don't know what feels legit here. Like,
I know it's very relatable, so I can.
So so that's kind of my disconnection. But I think one of the things that this minute does really well, related to the fight specifically, is something that I do think the movie does well in the Battle of New York, speaking more broadly, which is, meanwhile, this is happening with other characters. There are a lot of these flyby passes where we have, we started a fight with Loki and Thor, and then they cut to other stuff, and then they have the planes flying by the fight that is still happening with Loki and Thor. And I think giving us, maintaining a sense of place with all these many characters we have to keep track of in this fight, actually they do a pretty darn good job.
To your point, there is a real strength with the way that the film is constructed, and that was probably one of the things that they were working on the most, is how can we have all these people doing things and still track what they're all doing and find ways where it's not just a bunch of individuals, but in some capacity they are actually working together. And I think that there is an element here with all of that, and certainly we're seeing that with this minute. I do like this fight between Loki and Thor. I do wonder if Loki is doing it because he thinks he can defeat Thor, or is this just another distraction, or is he just angry? Does he think that because he has the scepter, he kind of has the upper hand? It does make me wonder if he tapped Thor on the chest, if he could mind control him, but obviously he's not going for that. So I'm assuming no, but again, I don't know. I really kind of love that in the scope of this fight, we've talked about a number of fights and how I think the one we've liked the least was the one between Nat and Clint on the catwalk in the helicarrier. But here you've got this great fight between Mjolnir and the scepter, and obviously the scepter can hold its own. But I love there's that moment where Loki swings the scepter at Thor, who ducks out of its way. And then Loki continues spinning it until it comes all the way back around his neck, and he holds it over his shoulders and blasts Thor. And I'm just like, that was actually kind of a cool little action move that we have with Loki here.
For sure. And do you notice all the sound feels amped? Like when they've always, whenever the Mjolnir hits something metal, particularly of Loki's, when they're fighting, you hear kind of that gong show boom. Like it just feels like that's a sound that shouldn't come out of those things because they're mythic weapons. But this fight, it seems like the gong is louder than ever. And there's something really satisfying about that for me.
Yeah, like a resonant tone that feels a little more solid.
Almost like spiritual, like this is a church. This is the bell of St. Peter's or something like that.
Yeah. We do get the start of the setup for the letters and the changing of the building as, Thor blocks Loki's shot with the scepter and it hits the RK in Stark, and the K goes flying off, the R kind of splinters into pieces. And so far now we're just left with STA. I wonder what else is going to happen to this sign over the course of the rest of this.
I wonder if only S and the rest of ARC drops off if the T stands, if they just call themselves Team.
T for team. Right.
Does this part feel a little bit manufactured? Like, were you guys, when you first saw this movie, do you have any memory of being able to call that particular shot that it would end with a big A?
I suppose the only thing that I don't think I thought that, but we've talked about this with the font choices and how the way that they did the titling at the start of this film, that A and this A, like it's the same A.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there was some element that we're like, oh, like I wonder if I caught like, oh, they used the same A in Stark. I don't know. I don't know if I would have caught that though.
I don't think I caught it, but now I can't unsee it. Like once you see it, it feels like, oh, okay, they're Tetrising the A for Avengers.
I definitely noticed it on a rewatch, but because they don't just go for it, just the A stance after this one blast, and it's just like implied that later on there's more damage done to it. I feel like it's a bit of a more subtle, in the least way a subtle note can be, way to bring that up. I feel like it's a nice touch. I like it more than the like Avengers line, or when they try to weave that into like the dialogue, something that I can look at and it's an A and it's Avengers. My brain goes, oh yeah, I noticed that. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah.
And to your point, Pete, the way that they use the falling letter and how it crashes down on the Grand Central below, it does create that nice transition from we were up high, we were watching this fight, we've followed this letter, we see where it lands, and now we're cutting to destruction in the streets. Like, there is some editing in this that genuinely works well to kind of shift us as we're going from one location to the next. And this is one of them and the handheld, like the way that they choose to shift to handheld here, this is exceptional. And this is a moment that actually does feel very authentic in the scope of kind of like what they're kind of trying to create with this attack.
You can do anything with a whip pan, Andy. I don't know if you knew that. Anything.
The magic of the whip pan.
Anything you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We do see some police car pull up. These cops are pulling up to the corner of Madison and 42nd Street. And then Iron Man does his flyby, several Chitauri chariots in pursuit. This is the point where the quinjet finally shows up. We hear Natasha call in over the radio. Stark, we're on a 3 heading northeast. And I have to ask the same question Tony does. What, did you stop for drive-through? They are in a quinjet, which flies, at least as fast as Tony can. Why do they take so long to get here? What the heck was going on?
Because nobody on the helicarrier had any idea where they were.
Pit stop in Budapest?
Yeah, nobody knows where they are. They went flying the wrong direction. I think we've covered that the helicarrier was lost somewhere over New Jersey, falling at an indecipherable rate.
I struggle so much with this. Like, the more I think about this, the more it bugs me. I don't think I ever noticed it when I first watched the film. But the fact that they are flying in a quinjet, which can fly, really, like, I can't remember. We talked about how fast. It's like the, whatever, it was Mach 2, I can't remember. It goes very fast, just like Tony, but they take so long to actually get here. And it's one of those things that bugs me the more I think about it, because I'm like, why would they take so long to get? It's not like they were stopping along the way to pick more people up. Like, I could have understood if there was something like, we got to stop and get Hulk or Bruce or something. But no, they're just flying, just like Tony is. But I mean, I can't remember what minute he arrived here at the top of Stark Tower, but I mean, it's been like 10 minutes that they've been floating around, and it speaks to me. Actually, the one thing that I thought could have actually made me buy into this is like, what if there is a hint of Clint still being mind controlled by Loki, and there's something in here that's making him not fly as fast as he should? That's the only thing that I can click with.
Okay, I'll let you have that. It's just like that Fight Club thing you mentioned the other day. You can keep that. That's fine. I think Hawkeye is finished with his dalliance with the dark side, and he's back. I do think that the Quinjet moves exactly as fast as witty dialogue requires.
Yeah, which generally we run into a lot with this film.
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you could explain it away if maybe the Quinjet runs Gattaca as well, and they were just a bit distracted. underway there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. They started playing Galaga and couldn't get past that. So, I'm just looking back. I mean, it was, let's see, 99 is, I think, when they take off from the helicarrier. And that's when Tony first shows up and confronts Selvig.
Okay, so it's been 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
But still, he's there, and they can fly as fast as him. And it's just like, why? I mean, they could have been flying side by side. I don't know. Maybe
they really could have been flying side by side.
Anyway.
Quibble.
I will move past this. So
noted.
But this is where we actually do start getting some sense of teamwork here. And this is, I suppose, the benefit of what they're doing here, because, they show up and they're instantly, working as a team. Tony tells them, swing up Park, I'm going to lay him out for you. And so we do. We actually see them go up Park Avenue, and he comes across, and the Chitauri pop out right in front. And this is also the point where we do have to start wondering about stray shots, because not necessarily from the bad guys, which of course there are plenty from the Chitauri, but really this is the point where we're going to start having the good guys just shooting all over the place trying to hit these Chitauri, and there's going to be just devastation and destruction all over the place. And again, I go back to my conversation a few minutes ago about the idea of putting this in New York, but it's like, it is what it is. We're just gonna destroy the city.
Yes, because New York has a history of knowing how to rebuild. That's why that's okay. They know how to clean. It's like give it to Mikey. He'll eat anything. Just put the fight in New York. They'll clean it up. New York strong.
Yeah, New York strong. Hashtag New York strong. Yeah,
New York together strong. Yeah,
New York together strong. Right.
We haven't actually asked this yet, Ewan. Were you a reader of the comics ever, or were you just kind of coming into the MCU more through the films?
Definitely more through the films. And then I read certain storylines. A mutual friend of Lachlan and mine actually had like a bunch of physical comics. And whenever we hung out with him on a social, just hanging out socially, I ended up just reading comics instead of talking to them. So there's a few storylines that I quite enjoy, but it's just, I kind of dipped in and out of it. But, it's, I guess, a bit easier to just follow along with the 32 movies that they got in the MCU, other than like the countless amount of comics that you could dive into.
Yeah. Although even like looking at the number of films nowadays, it's like, God, they just keep cranking these things out. There's so many.
Yeah. It's overwhelming. Yeah.
I feel like there's so much Marvel fatigue going on in kind of general these days, especially with some of their films really underperforming at least their expectations. It does make me wonder if they are going to start thinking about doing some slowing down a little bit and kind of reevaluating. Maybe we focus on quality projects instead of just constant projects.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that would be ultimately what would be better for everyone, for like, especially how they've been cranking the VFX industry with their projects. It's just rather do less projects, give them a bit more time and polish them a bit more, and ultimately we get better stories at the end.
Yeah, right. Do you have any particular films from the MCU that you would say are your favorites?
Yes, I'm a Guardians boy, and why would I say boy? I don't know why I say boy. Star-Lord? I don't know. I really love 70s rock and like 80s rock. So to me, I love all of the entire soundtrack. It's usually what I listen to, just like to chill, and it just is that impersonated into a movie. And I really like the entire like Guardians trilogy and how they closed it off as well. This is like the most consistent to me the MCU has been throughout like one storyline to me. So probably that's my favorite. And I like Winter Soldier quite a bit as well. The original Iron Man, and then of course you can't leave like the Infinity conclusion of the Infinity Saga with Infinity War and Endgame unmentioned here.
Sure. There definitely are peaks and valleys through the franchise. It's definitely had some moments that work better than others. In the scope of big final battles, I mean, we're going to be talking to you today, and then 2 weeks from now, you'll come back and we'll talk about minute 115. But in the scope of like big battles, like final fights at the ends of the films, like where does this one stack up with some of like what would you call your favorites?
Well, it's certainly better than Age of Ultron.
Okay.
I really like Infinity War. That's my favorite. Probably out of those. And then to me, I only kind of picture the Avengers right now because it's like the big scenes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's something about just like dancing it out, even if the villain is not as great in the original Guardians movie. It's so silly, but also kind of fun. But I think the MCU is a bit stronger with bringing together certain characters that have a bit of a quippiness with each other until it has become a bit more overwhelming, where like everyone feels kind of replaceable with the dialogue that they get. Here, I feel like it feels more catered to the personalities. So I always kind of am looking more at that over a big action set piece to cap it all off, to end the movie with. It's kind of what I'm focusing with. So I can't really pinpoint one down right now.
I get it, yeah. You know, it's interesting being such a fan of the Guardians trilogy, because, I mean, those are definitely a strong one, and James Gunn clearly has a very kind of comic booky sort of mentality and vision, the way that he kind of always has constructed his films. I certainly think that there's something there with those. But also I think there's something that he's done very much like the Avengers in, and you know, I don't really know if people have compared this much, but just the fact that the Guardians is another team. Like it's not like Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. The Guardians is a group. It is another team movie, and to that end, it's very interesting that in the scope of all the Avengers films, that they also have the Guardians of the Galaxy as their own entity, but also part of the larger whole. And I do think that he handles the group dynamic incredibly well, which also we saw in the Suicide Squad. Like, I think that's something that Gunn does well.
I was just going to say, Gunn has kind of a natural affinity with making teams feel well represented on screen. You don't get, the characters don't really get lost. I think he's great at it. Even in like, the Suicide Squad is so far off the rails compared to even the wackiness of Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, it's just crazy, and yet it still feels resonant.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does with kind of like, now that he's over in DC land, just kind of like helming up all of that stuff. And you know, obviously he's had to deal a lot right now with kind of the everything going on with the Flash. But I don't know. I'm curious to see where they go moving forward. I feel like, you know, for every one of him, there's a Zaslav that's going to somehow try to tear things down and make it that much more difficult, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also tonally being a bit different, taking on the Superman Legacy film, right? That next film that is very much not focused on a team, probably just on more of a singular character, to see him do that. Obviously not as silly as something that he's done with like Super. You wouldn't go that raunchy. But
yeah, right.
To kind of see him do that, go from Super to Superman. That's the true, the American filmmaking dream.
Or interestingly, like throw Brightburn in there, which I know he didn't direct, but was certainly very much involved. And like, clearly he has a draw to kind of that type of story, right? And so it's interesting to see where he's going to go with Superman now.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of a little straying a little bit from this particular minute, but we've kind of hit the end of it as we get kind of everybody's fighting. And yeah, we end this minute with the Quinjet flying up toward the top of Stark Tower, and Clint spots Thor and Loki up there and calls out to Nat. That is where the minute ends. Any last thoughts about anything going on here for either of you?
I really like how the Quinjet just like halts in air and the sound effect that goes along with it. I feel like that's really neatly put together there. Stood out in a positive way to me.
It's something that, seeing the way that they're operating that as a jet that is able to kind of hover, do what it needs to do for its vertical liftoffs, all that sort of stuff, the way that the wings open up to reveal those the fans in there, like everything about it. It's a cool jet, and it's clearly something that you can see that they've spent some time putting together and processing the way that they're going to make it work. And yeah, right at the end of this minute, as it comes up there, it's cool the way that you can see its wingtips kind of angling out to kind of change its trajectory and everything. It's a very cool jet, so good call. All right, well, let's wrap things up for today and this week. Minute 105 will close it up. So, Ewan, thank you again so much for being here for 4/5 of the week this week.
4/5 of the week.
Well, thanks for having me.
We are thrilled. Tell everybody again one last time this week about your podcast and where they can tune in.
Yes, you can find us everywhere under the Quiet on Set podcast. Yeah, that's pretty much it on all platforms. I don't know. I've said
Perfect.
it so much this week. If you've been listening, then I feel like if you're not interested at this point, then I'm probably not going to get you. But I certainly appreciate it.
Well, I will just say, like, by
but
the time these actually go out, you'll have coverage of films that you saw at Cannes.
Exactly. And we'll have short reviews. We'll have Quiet on Set reviews. We'll have a full recap of the entire festival. Heaps of stuff around, Gun, and some extra stuff that we got in the works as well.
And you have you're gonna have your kit right in there. You're gonna be, I assume, doing some live recording and streaming from Cannes, right?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, yeah. We're doing a few live streams from there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
Exactly.
fantastic.
That's awesome.
Just fantastic. So yes, by now, even if you haven't subscribed already, go see the Cannes stuff, which will now have been released by the time these episodes go live. Subscribe, Quiet on the Set podcast.
Well, we will be back next week with another guest, everybody. So tune in for that. And we'll be back with you in 2 weeks. So, Pete, thanks as always.
You know what Loki can't mind control, Andy? A quinjet. That's next week.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.